Howdy, all, the old captain here, and I wanted to put together a very important economics lesson because it's going to answer a very important question that is bothering millions of people. And I'm not being exaggerating, it's just you people that have really lousy taste in YouTube channels, and you should all be subscribing to mine. So hopefully tomorrow I wake up, I'll have at least 50 million YouTube subscribers, because I am going to answer this question, and accurately so. And that is, why hasn't the economy collapsed? Why haven't we collapsed yet? When's it going to go on? When's it going to happen? And what ends up happening is, on two things. One, for those on the mathematically competent side of the formula, typically conservatives, libertarians, or just mathematical realists. Like, God, well, how long can we keep borrowing money before we pay the costs and consequences? What's going on? And on the left or the math-impaired side of the political spectrum, they're like, yeah, economy had to collapse. And we see Argentina collapse and Greece collapse. Like, why don't we collapse? What's going on? Well, here's the thing. We already have collapsed. You just don't know it. And people, and I think this is the problem, people are expecting, when we see collapse, we think, the stock market crash of 2009, or the stock market crash of 1929, or the dot-com bubble where this big explosion, and oh my God, chaos and hell, and Miley Ray Cyrus goes from Hannah Montana to Miley syphilis, and then bad things happen. But as economics tends to be, it's not always as straightforward, and especially because we're the United States, we're unique. And so I'm going to explain to you why we already have collapsed, we just don't know it yet, or it doesn't feel like it. Okay, first thing. The problem that we all in our minds is we are borrowing more money than we could ever possibly pay off. And so we say, well, how would anyone lend money to the United States? We have a horrible balance sheet. We spend money more than our economy is slowing down. Our people are becoming lower and lower quality caliber people. They do not work as hard. Where's the economic growth in the future going to come to make good all this government borrowing that's going on? Well, to understand that, we have to understand, how does the government keep getting people to lend it money? Well, there's foreign lenders out there. There's domestic lenders. People will buy U.S. bonds. Foreigners, the Chinese, the Asians, the Middle Eastern, just foreigners in general, will buy U.S. bonds. And when you buy a bond, that means you give the government money, you lend the government money, and then it goes and pisses it away on any number of sort of vote-bribing, vote-getting schemes and schematics, or maybe a war here or there. Well, it's happened, though, especially during the crash, where people are like, we're not too sure whether we want to lend the United States that much money anymore. And the Chinese actually started pulling back a little bit. And then the U.S. government says, well, where are we going to get the money? We have all this stuff we have to go and spend because of political reasons, because we need to bribe and buy people votes. We have all these expenditures we like to spend, but we don't have enough tax revenue coming in, and no one's going to lend us the money. Enter quantitative easing. They go to the Federal Reserve. Okay. Now, the Federal Reserve is not the government. The Federal Reserve is a separate bank, essentially. It's a central bank. It's a separate entity, considered a non-profit, and like a corporation, like an individual, like a government, state, federal, or local, it is a separate legal entity, and it has its own finances. It has its own financial health. It has assets, it has liabilities, generates incomes, and things like that. The interesting thing about the Federal Reserve, though, is not only does it act as a lender of last resort and kind of back up the entire U.S. Financial system, it also prints our money. So what the whole idea of quantitative easing was, okay, no one else is going to lend the federal government money because it's a bad lending risk. So what we're going to do is we're going to do quantitative easing. And it's nothing more than a euphemism talking over your head, like professors, they used to use. In my day, it's a paradigm shift. That's what they did in the 90s. It's like, you're just a fucking idiot. So what quantitative easing is basically this. The Federal Reserve will print off a bunch of money, and then we'll buy bonds from the United States government. And then that way the government gets the money, it doesn't have to tax people, and it doesn't have to subject itself to the real world whims and demands of people that would lend it money in the international market. Like, okay, the Chinese ain't going to lend us money? Too bad. Fifth. Inside joke. Dave Chappelle, look it up. The Chinese ain't going to lend us money? All right, we'll just print off more, or buy our bonds. The Federal Reserve will print off more and buy bonds from the United States government. The Japanese won't let it? No, fine. Fifth, we're going to print off more money at the Federal Reserve, buy more bonds from the U.S. government. Government gets funded and finances, so forth and so on. Domestic people don't, fine, we'll print off more money at the Federal Reserve. So if you look at the Federal Reserve balance sheet, which you can, it's on the internet, federalreserve.gov, look it up, you start to see the Federal Reserve, among other bad assets, bad quality assets, taking larger and larger positions in U.S. Treasuries, U.S. bonds, federal bonds. Not to mention mortgage-backed securities. Remember how we bailed out the mortgage industry and the banking industry? That's what they did. They bought all these worthless mortgage-backed securities and mortgages off the bank's balance sheet and gave the banks money. It was basically just a bailout, but a euphemistic way called quantitative easing by which we did it. So you can kind of see this. I know this is boring, but if you take the time and you go and you look at the Federal Reserve balance sheet over time, it becomes really apparent and clear what the Federal Reserve is doing. And this is why I think the title of the post was Why the Federal Reserve is Jesus Christ. Because the concept is the Federal Reserve, like Jesus, he died for everyone's sins. It's kind of the same thing with the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve, did you lend money to stupid $30,000 to buy a McMansion at the age of 25? Don't worry, the federal government will bail you out. Did you build a bunch of condos that no one was going to buy? Don't worry, the Federal Reserve will bail you out. Did you piss away all your money on a vote bribing scheme at the federal government? Don't worry, the Federal Reserve will bail you out. And I predict what will happen is you will see the Federal Reserve start bailing out the student loans, the student loan market. In any case, so the Federal Reserve takes on the sins, all the financial sins of the country, and you can see all the sins stack up on the balance sheet, all these bonds and mortgages and debts that are never going to be paid back. They're never going to be paid back. Okay? Now, to the logical mind, you're saying, okay, so it's the Federal Reserve that's going to go belly up. It gave the money, it bought bonds from the federal government, so the federal government has the money. They really don't have the risk. It's the Federal Reserve that's holding all the risk with all these U.S. Treasuries, all these mortgage-backed securities, all these, to be, as I predict, student loans. And when these don't pay back, it's the Federal Reserve that will go bankrupt. And you say, well, wait a minute. What happens if the Federal Reserve goes bankrupt? The banks won't go bankrupt. I mean, the central bank will, but the banks won't. If the banks are capitalized, okay. If the federal government just said, screw you, we're not paying our loans, and the mortgage-backed securities, the banks said, screw you, we're not paying our mortgage-backed securities, and the students said, screw you, we're not paying our student loans, since it's the Federal Reserve that has all these loans, the only entity, if everyone says, screw it, we're not paying, like the federal government, think about it, the federal government says, we're not paying that $18 trillion in debt. It's the Federal Reserve that would go belly up. You say, well, God, is that like the magic bullet? Is it truly like Jesus Christ? It just dies, but we're all okay. No, because as I told you before, we've already crashed. And the reason or the way how this has happened is because how did the Federal Reserve afford all these shitty-ass, worthless mortgage-backed and bond-like securities? How did they afford it? They printed money. All right? Now, what you don't realize is that is a tax on you, me, and everybody else. And depending on what measure of money you want, there's M1, M2, M3, and L. The M3 and L I don't think they track anymore. I'd have to look it up, but I think they've tripled the money supply. Now, in the real world of economics, that would whittle down everyone's purchasing power to a third of what it used to be. Okay? So, one day we have $1 trillion in the U.S. economy. The next day we have $3 trillion, but no increase in economic production. Now prices just went up three times, so threefold. And unless you got some of that money directly from the Federal Reserve, which you didn't, it was the banks that did, and the mortgage back, all that other stuff, your savings dropped by 67%. And that is the price we all pay. That is the crash. Now here's where things get a little tricky when international economics comes in. You'd say, well, wait a minute, so what you're saying, the Federal Reserve printed off all this money and debased our currency. Shouldn't that trigger inflation? Where's the inflation? The price is inflation. The collapse will come in the form of inflation. Why haven't we seen any? Did we actually pull off a Jesus Christ superstar move here just on a financial world? No. And this is two reasons why. One, there is inflation. What people like to cite, especially idiot media types and politically biased government types and news press release agencies, is the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, which is the standard traditional measure of inflation. And that includes consumables, milk, coffee, gas, all this other stuff. And I go, but for the most part, that's been around, I think, 1.5%, 2%. So everyone's saying, like, well, there's no inflation. You have got to realize, though, that you don't just buy from this basket of goods, and they keep some really key things out of the CPI. And it's not out of malicious intent or they're trying to hide it. It's just traditionally we haven't done it this way. But if you're a real economist or just a smart person, you step back and say, wait a minute, that's not the only things we've purchased. And certainly, they're not the largest. If you look at the CPI, I bet you, I haven't looked at, but they're not the largest single ticket items that cost the most in your budget. Let's say you're a millennial or a Gen Xer. What are your major expenses? Well, let's see here. Oh, rent. Has rent gone up? Yeah. Depending on the town you're in, I know, but rent has skyrocketed. I think, God almighty, at least here in the Twin Cities, it's damn well near doubled since the housing bubble came along. I'm like looking, because I'm in rental. I own rental property, and I was just like, I gotta jack up my rents. Like, holy cow, this is great. It's good for me because I have an asset that's hedged against inflation. But rents are going up. Housing prices are going up. Certainly not as much as they did during the bubble, but they have been going up at a rate much faster than inflation. Insurance. How many of you millennials are paying a lot more for your mandated Barack Obama Obamacare insurance? Did your insurance premiums only go up by 2 or 3% like inflation? No. Did they go up a little bit more? And let me think. Is insurance a pretty big expense on your monthly budget? I bet it is, but it's not in the CPI. Also, we don't think about this a lot, and that is the stock market. Mutual funds, bonds, securities. Has the stock market gone up since 2009? Yeah, it's doubled. But we view that as a good thing. Like, oh, that's great, the stock market went up. I'm sorry, let's again point to the millennials. It's great for baby boomers who pretty much own all the stock through 401ks and IRAs and pension funds and retirements. Right. But for you millennials, and to a lesser extent Gen Xers, do you millennials have any money in the stock market? Did you experience any of that rise? All that happened for you, from your perspective, if you are looking to invest in the stock market, is stocks and bonds just doubled in price. They got twice as expensive. And to relate it to, again, younger people, imagine if an Xbox went from $400 to $800. Would you cheer? See, here's the thing. No one tells you, well, quote, you need to invest in the stock market, your 401k, your IRA. All right? That should be part of your budget. And now a very large part of your budget, your retirement planning, just doubled. All right? But again, we think stocks going up in price is good. No, you want stocks to crash to like 1, and then you buy, and for the next 40 years, and then the day before you retire, it jumps up to 80 fucking gazillion, and then you sell, and then you're 80 fucking gazillionaire, right? But again, inflation it's seeping into different areas of the economy. And then again, let's go to the millennials, or if I'm 50 years old and I'm going to go back and get my master's in creative writing. Have you seen tuition prices? Has tuition gone up a little bit? Just a little? And if it did go up, it didn't certainly go up more than inflation, right? No. And gee, where does most of the financing come from? Oh, that's right. Bonds, which is guaranteed by what? The federal government. Whoa. And who lent the federal government the money? That's right, the Federal Reserve. I mean, that directly, especially these past 5-6 years, that directly you can see where that sieve goes. So these large ticket items, tuition, insurance, cars, good Lord, I saw the average price of a car is $33,000. No. I know a buddy who bought a house, he's not that much older than me, for about $30,000. This is back in the late 70s, early 80s, but no, mid-80s. Anyway, there is inflation, and it is in huge budget items on the average person. Your insurance, your tuition, your transportation, your lodging, food and gas and things the media focus on, not so much. But your big ticket items, yes. So you're already suffering part of the collapse. Now you would think with debt to about 110% to GDP, I think it's more 105. I have to look up my figures. slowing economic growth, it would be more than these bubbles forming in tuition and all that. And while these things certainly do erode and lower your standard of living and make it hard to live, it's not this ultimate collapse that we've seen in Argentina, Russia in 1998, and Mexico in the 80s, Argentina again, probably Argentina next week. I hate fucking Argentina if you haven't figured it out. What was another one that collapsed? Greece. You'd think Spain, I guess, is a slightly lesser, or post-bubble collapse, Ireland, Iceland, you see like a real crushing, like, oh my gosh, how come this hasn't happened? Well, there's one final thing, that's the international economics aspect. There is inflation occurring. We are paying the price. The Federal Reserve is not being Jesus Christ for us here. But there is foreign countries still buying U.S. bonds, and maybe not so much U.S. bonds, but they are buying U.S. dollars. Because, as bad as the United States is, we have the world's reserve currency. I'm going to explain that very simply. It means we don't suck. We're the least sucky country on the planet. Now, originally, we got the world reserve currency after World War II, because the world was destroyed, except for the United States. And instead of trading in Deutschmarks that were hyperinflated and there was no economic production to give the German mark's value, or the Russian economy, which is command and control, you wouldn't trust Stalin with your money anyway, or the British economy and the British pound, well, they didn't have jack shit for production because they had the shit bombed out of them. Where is a country that has the economic production capacity to give its currency value, to make sure these pieces of paper can actually go and buy something of value, therefore giving them real value? No, that was the United States. And so what happened is we became the world's reserve currency, and people would trade in our currency and not their own because it was a store of value. So contracts are written in it, oil contracts are denominated in it. And as the world economy grew, okay, then we start trading in other currencies. But it was kind of like the United States is this world reserve currency, and a world reserve currency actually does play a pretty good role in international economics. Typically, traditionally, it's gold or silver. But if you have a strong country like the Roman currency back in the old days, who wouldn't take Roman currency? Right now, if you go to Venezuela, you want to deal with Venezuelan politics, do you want your contracts written in Venezuelan pesos or boliviars or whatever they're called? Probably not. So you'd say, no, they're denominated in U.S. dollars, and that's how we're going to transact. So what this does, if you're a world reserve currency, is it increases the demand from your little country to the whole frickin' planet. And even though the United States is in very bad financial shape, even though our people are decreasing in quality and caliber, even though our debts are going up, our education quality is going down, our productive capacity is going down, and as all the bad things that you see happening here, it's pretty much worse everywhere else. And so, as one economist, I forgot her name, she says, we're the best looking horse in the glue factory. All these economies and currencies are going to die. Don't worry, they will. But we're going to be the last one. And so when people look at their, like Japan, their debt to GDP ratio is like over 200%. Italy, the same thing. They're going to come to the United States. So there is demand for the U.S. currency. Now, what does this do? Well, people from foreign countries buy dollars. They exchange dollars, or they buy U.S. dollar-denominated assets. In other words, demand for dollars. So these dollars go overseas. They sit in banks. They sit in reserve accounts. They sit in hedge funds. They sit across the planet. They're sitting there, and people are holding on to them, not intending to spend them, just simply holding them as more of an insurance value, or to use as a transaction to buy a gold, or not gold too, but oil, equipment, whatever else. It's denominated in U.S. dollars. We have to have a certain amount of U.S. dollars on hand so that we can do international transactions of business, because most contracts are written in terms of U.S. dollars. Not most, but a lot, disproportionately more to the size of our economy. So what does that do? It takes the dollars out of our economy and spreads it across the world. In other words, the amount of dollars trading around in our own economy doesn't trigger that much inflation. If these dollars stayed in the United States, oh yeah, there'd be a lot of inflation. We'd look like Venezuela. We would. Venezuela, Argentina, they have like double-digit inflation every month. That's what we would look like, because then it would be a contained single-unit economy. But since we're the United States, we have the reputation, and frankly, most people across the world are too stupid to look at debt to GDP ratios or do any kind of financial analysis or credit risk analysis on the federal government of the United States as a country. They'll sop up those greenbacks because, yeah, it's green, it's the U.S., yeah, go USA, General Eisenhower, you know, fucking Eisenhower and the quality and caliber of people that actually built the United States to that level, long gone, long gone. In other words, we are exporting our inflation. You may have heard that term. That's what it means. Like, we got the dollars here, but as long as foreign people want to buy our dollars and we get them out of here, cool. Then we don't inflate our thing. What's even worse, and I'll be intellectually honest, is when we go to these third world countries, and you know me, evil, right-wing, Republican, libertarian type, I don't care what we pay. And we go and buy, say, Apple products for $500, and we pay some poor guy in a slave labor camp. Not really. He's paid very poorly. Working conditions are not the greatest. Certainly not what they are in the United States. It's like, here, we'll give you our shitty ass worthless dollars, and I'll get an iPhone. And then China's like, yeah, U.S. dollar, you're right. They actually think that those dollars have value. So again, we buy, this is where we have a trade deficit, where we're buying all these goods and services with our dollars. Like, yeah, here, get it out of our economy, get it out of our economy, get it out of our economy. So if it were to ever happen where the dollar, like, I don't know, the United States just does something really stupid, although we've done really stupid stuff and people keep buying our crap. We elect Bernie Sanders, he runs debt to GDP of, like, say, 20%. I mean, it'd have to be such a shocking blow to the international markets that even these foreigners who've been sucking up our dollars wake up and say, wait a minute, the U.S. may not pay us back. Canada invades us, I don't know. Also be like, the dollar ain't that stable no more. It ain't worth that much anymore. And then they unload the dollars. And then they're trying to sell. And then, well, one way to buy dollars is to buy stuff made in the United States. So they'll get anything they can, or what will they do? They'll cash in the bonds. They won't lend the federal government any more money. And when that world reserve status is lost, all those dollars will come home to roost, and then you will have hyperinflation. But this is why there hasn't been this classical Armageddon, Mad Max kind of collapse that you're all expecting. Because, one, there has been a significant amount of inflation. We have been paying a little bit of a price of it at home. But we've been exporting the shit out of our dollars. And it's the foreigners. They are buying our dollars. We are exporting our inflation. And in that sense, you can pull off the Jesus Christ like a politician. And that is, you live and you enjoy this time while the rest of the world is completely clueless about the worthlessness of U.S. dollars. And then you die before people start demanding the real money back or demanding some kind of intrinsic value in exchange for these U.S. dollars. So, in other words, the rest of the world is kind of supporting us in a certain sense. And hopefully you live long enough that they don't figure it out, and then you die. That'd be, pretty cool. And it's completely immoral, not right, but, that's why you're not going to have, and hopefully you will never experience that horrible type of collapse. But keep in mind, it is only because we have that world reserve currency. If it was any other country, we would have collapsed, and you see this happening probably once a year now. Argentina, Russia, Mexico, just search currency collapse or economic collapse and type in a country, and you'll see it. You will see it happen. That's how it typically happens. Hyperinflation. No one wants to do business with you anymore. They try and institute price controls. The shelves are, seriously, you want to look at it, it will happen exactly like what's going on under the Maduro, and then before him, the Hugo Chavez regime in Venezuela. Price controls, we're socialists, we know everything. Well, we're not going to... And then banning the use of dollars or foreign currencies, and all of a sudden setting prices, and then there's no food on the shelves. Seriously, go and search shelves, store shelves, grocery store, Venezuela, and see how many pictures of nothingness, like these empty shelves, come up. So anyway, that's it. Hope we learned a little bit. Yes, there is a collapse. It's slowly happening, and to a certain extent, we are paying the price for it. But I really don't think it's going to come in this, .com crash, Black Tuesday, what was it? Black Monday, what was Black Monday? Black Tuesday was 1929, Black Monday was 1987, whatever. It's not going to happen like this lightning fast kind of thing, because, like I said, the rest of the world is even more sucky than the U.S. So as long as we keep that going on, you're not going to see this rapid crash collapse coming anytime soon. So, hope we learned something. Send this to some friends. Please forward it. Jesus Christ, I only got 20,000. Fuck, come on. Huh? Has any other economist explained it this clearly to you? Huh? Come on, give me a little love. Oh, by the way, I got a real cool shirt. I got it today for like Christmas time. So, anyway, best of luck. CaptainCapitalism.blogspot.com. Go to my consulting site, assholeconsulting.com, and look me up on SoundCloud for the Clary podcast. It's Aaron Clary. Just search it on SoundCloud. Toodles.